So this is a conversation between me, Henry L. Sullivan III, and Joni. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your novel, and then I'll jump off from that to the thing I wanted to talk to you about.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me. My name is Joni Marie Iraci. I'm a retired registered nurse who raised three kids and then decided, let me go back to school. And I had a couple of college credits. I went to the traditional nursing school and back 100 years ago, and I kept getting invitations to Sarah Lawrence to come to their open house for continuing education for adults. 10 years I threw it out because how am I going to do this? And then finally I said, okay, let me go. So I go, I can't open the door to the place. I thought it was an omen. I can't even open the door. How am I going to go here? It was so surreal. Somebody opened the door. It was held in this rickety old building, kind of on the cusp of campus. So I opened the door. Somebody opened the door for me and I walked in and I was plastered against the wall. There were so many people. And there was a staircase and the director came down the stairs. I swear this is the truth. And pointed to me out of the 100 people in there and said, you need to do this. Come up to my office.
Wow.
Isn't that like weird? So I said, okay. I went up to the office. She handed me the application. I filled it out. She said, go home and write an essay. And it was all about writing. And the registrar liked nurses. I had some college credits, but he gave me a chunk of college credits because he seemed to have liked nurses. Never laid eyes on him. I called him the wizard because they asked me to write for the school paper. It was really quite comical because I was the eldest. They actually interviewed me at the Journal News because I was the eldest graduate. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was hard work, a lot of reading, a tremendous amount of writing. And then I finished, I graduated. Vera Wang gave the commencement speech. So if you look her up, somehow we're linked. And I know, it's bizarre. Her speech was quite weird. And, these kids are going out in the world with no jobs, and she's talking about how rich she is, so that was kind of strange. But anyway, I took a year off, and I got jury duty. I had 3 months of a criminal case in downtown Manhattan, and I had to go on this very grueling criminal case. And at the time, I was writing my first book, and I'd never been in a courtroom, and I had 35 pages of a court scene pretty much based on Law and Order, which I had to rip up because it was not reality. The judge was great. His wife was a writer, so he helped me. And after the case was over, and I was accepted to Columbia. I never thought I would get in. I just applied. And part of the application was to review a book that was written within 10 years. And I like, 18th century, 19th century literature. That's what I read. So I read a book by one of the professors at Columbia. I never had her, but I read this book. And in the middle of it, I found a glaring error, just like this word that was used completely wrong. Cooling to the point of hyperthermia, which was like, whoa, holy crappy editing, Batman. So I wrote that in my essay about this, my review, and thinking, okay, now I'll for sure never get in. And I subsequently found out that the director of fiction couldn't stand it. He loved that. So anyway, I get into Columbia. And again, I'm like the eldest person on the planet, but it was great. I mean, most of my friends are, young. So because of that, and some of them were really wonderful writers. A lot of them, they went from grammar school to high school to college to graduate school and never experienced the world. I helped them a lot. A lot of them wrote medical things that were outlandish. That's my trajectory. Interestingly enough, I joined the Authors Guild. I'm not one, I would never put pen to paper or fingers to computer and try to write something unless I was armed to the teeth with credentials. So, I have an MFA from Columbia in fiction and creative writing, and they don't even know what Columbia is down here. I'm not kidding. And
Should we say that you're in Florida?
I'm going to write with a pen name because it is a very strange place. So yeah, anyway, and then I wrote my first book, and it was indie published, and it came out in a second edition. That wasn't the best experience in the world, but when you're hot off the press, you don't really know what you're doing. It was a learning, that was in 2019. So it's a learning curve. And this book, I spent a lot on marketing. I spend more on marketing than I ever make, of course.
Right.
But I'll never give up. I mean, if you give up, you'll never do anything. So it's consistency. I have a publicist waiting in the wings for the next one, which has already been picked up by the publisher. So cha-ching. But I had a social media marketer who did all these reels and all this stuff on but I've met some wonderful people along the way. So the Authors Guild, I donated money to them a couple of years ago, and whoever the director at the time was really fabulous. And she read my bio and she contacted me. She goes, "Your trajectory is just fascinating, like what you did this and that, and you are brave, to go back to school." And I got to go to Dan Brown's house.
Really?
Yes. Oh my gosh. He was like my Justin Bieber. He He opened the door. I was almost kicked out, like he lives in this amazing house. And yeah, that was fascinating. So they don't, of course, nobody, not even the Colombian professors will give you a leg up. So one who I, out of the blue, contacted Steve Berry, the prolific author of thrillers.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I contacted him a year before my book was picked up, the Vatican Daughter book. And I said, "If this is who I am, I'm sorry for the intrusion. This is who I am. If my book gets picked up, would you consider endorsing it?" And he wrote back, "Sure."
Wow, that's awesome.
And a year later, I said, "Remember me? Remember me? Here's the book." And he said, "Send me the manuscript and I'll do it." And he did. And a couple of months ago, I drove 500 miles to meet him. And he's a wonderful guy. He's too busy.
Okay.
He's too busy to endorse the next one, but I guess he's
Mm-hmm.
a one-hit wonder. But, keep at it, and that's what I do. And I do a tremendous amount of research on each book.
Well, now that you mentioned the novel, this is the thing that I was really curious about, which is, so on the one hand, you have a novel, the title is The Vatican Daughter. And so on the one hand, you can have two different things related to the Vatican. So you can have a story that's all about the church. And in that sense, I'm thinking of Conclave, right? You're familiar with Conclave?
Of course.
Well, on the other hand, you can have a story that is where the scenes take place in a monastery, but the novel isn't really about the church. It's actually about theology. And there I'm thinking of The Name of the Rose. Are you familiar with that? Umberto Eco?
Oh, please.
And so to me, you have to be in different headspaces to write one versus the other.
Well, of course. Yeah. I mean, this took about 10 years to write.
Really? It took you 10 years to write it? Wow.
It took 10 years of percolation, let me put it that way.
Okay, I got you. Okay, right.
I used to go to Italy all the time until the pandemic. We would go every year. So I was standing in St. Peter's Square looking at the Vatican thinking, I wonder what's going on in there now. Now you have to understand, I'm from the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the thick of the scandals. I went to 12 years of Catholic school, and I was a very kind of quiet, shy, insightful child. And I saw this incredible hypocrisy going on. Even then, I couldn't go home and say to my mother, she was right there with them. So I always experienced it. And then as an adult, I was teaching religion as a volunteer. And it was even worse because this was Connecticut and the priests had their fingers in the cookie jar and they were doing all kinds of things and pontificating, to you at the same time and being this illusion of devoutness and holier than thou and all of that stuff. And I would fight with them I fought with this one particular one who's now Mr., who went to jail, all of that. So I walked away from it all. And then I started with this book. I had the title in my head first, like a boom, bolt of lightning. The title hit, like wonder what if a girl was involved, or whatever, in some fashion. Then as I research, you go down all these rabbit holes. You're a writer, so as you're researching something, find other things out. So I uncovered the true story of papal kidnappings in 1859 by Pius IX. So the Jews, of course, this was the Papal States before Italy was united, and the Pope was in charge, and the Jews were put in the ghetto. And they were wealthy merchants, and this one particular family, they hired illiterate Christian servant girls to work on the Sabbath, because the Jewish servant girls couldn't do that. And this one in particular, child of this family was sick, and the parents were sitting around the bedside, who was about 3 at the time. And when a Christian servant girl assumed he was dying and baptized him when the parents left the room. Mm-hmm. Subsequently, she confessed to the parish priest, and it was illegal for a Jewish family to raise a Christian child. So the Vatican swooped in like stormtroopers and took the kid. And this was many children it happened to, but this particular story stood out. And he was raised by the Pope and became a priest and all of that, and the parents could never get the child back. So a professor at Brown actually wrote a book about this, and he won a Pulitzer. So I contacted him. He was very gracious, and we chatted, and I said, how come this is such not known? Well, the Catholics were embarrassed that this happened subsequently, and then the Jews were embarrassed that they allowed it to happen. So, so that kind of fueled the story. I weave it in. It's fiction, but it's based very much so on the goings on. And the next one is even worse, so I'm going to hell for sure.
Well, it sounds like your experience, and also where you land in terms of that novel, at least, is the delta between the theology, or the ideals expressed in the theology, and the reality on the ground inside the actual church. Well, so it sounds like that's basically what you're exploring.
Well, while I was at Sarah Lawrence, I took this amazing class with Professor David Castriata, who's an art historian. He concentrates on Greek and Roman art, but it became more of an investigation into the origins of Catholicism and all of that. And it's so, patriarchal, powerful, all about power. I mean, the conclave, for example, what was that? That was almost like our government, the backbiting and the lust for power and the thirst for, the ending was kind of bizarre, and far-fetched, because we're medical people. We know that was like a little off, but seriously, that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. If you look back, Jesus was not in a building. He went out into the world and do unto others. I'm in the thick of it down here with born again people and their misguided, doctrine. They told me, and I'm very helpful I'm a nurse, so I always have that, like I help first and regret it later. Mm-hmm. And I do a lot of that here. And they're like, well, you're not good enough to get into heaven, I was told. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. But that's fine. If you're going to be there, I don't want to be there anyway. But yeah, so it's a lot of, I don't know, I'm doing a whole different kind of research for the second one in the series is done, and that's in publication right now. But the third one I'm researching right now, which is a total different kind of perspective of, like the miracles and what really happened. And you have to understand, like, the Bible is not the word of God. It's written by men. Mm-hmm. It was written in Hebrew and Aramaic and Greek. So it's all subject to interpretation. It's kind of like talking through the paper cup,
Well, I've also, back when these were the types of things that people talked about, I remember watching a video where a religion historian was talking about how, well, the way he describes the Bible is more like a library than a book. To your point about all these different authors
Right.
basically contributed to it, and they did it over the course of so many years that it's really a lot more like a library than one book. I'm fascinated.
There are many, many, many different gospels that were suppressed by, the church, and then offshoots of like Gnosticism and all those other offshoots that were, cast aside. And let's face it, all of the, like the vestments and the way the cruciform church is, that's all derived from the pagans.
Hmm.
You know, they took the pagan idols and and then they put, their imprint on top. And that's how it all came to be. And there was no a Mary until 500 AD, when the powers that be in the church got together and had their night, their council of whatever, and they decided they needed a goddess to compete with the pagans who had goddesses, and that's how that came about. And she really wasn't truly indoctrinated until the 1700s. So most people don't do this much investigation to know. They just go on blind faith, which is fine if, it's fine if it works for you, but I'm more curious by nature. So I tend to do a little digging and ferreting out of all this nonsense because I experienced it, like these nuns who were, I'm not saying all of them, but they were cruel, so it didn't make sense to me. How can you be cruel to a little kid, based on whatever, like I'm talking enraged wrath over somebody chewing gum in class or something insane. I experienced all of that.
Yeah, that is basically another, at least in terms of people that I've met, another common story that raises the question, why are people who ostensibly have dedicated their lives to educating children, why does it seem as though they hate children so much?
I mean, all the pedophilia and all of that, it was a place to hide too. It was a place to hide because, you have a collar and not all of them, of course.
Right, exactly.
But a good chunk. And what happened to them? They were moved around. They weren't exposed. They were accused and left one parish and were put in another one to do it again somewhere else. So there was.
So it sounds like you, in your early life, you've been you were very exposed to the Catholic communities, and now you're exposed to basically Protestant communities. The people you're talking about now.
To be honest, but
what's that?
I don't know what they are. To be honest. Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, not very bright, number one. So when that happens, you believe anything, you're told by somebody who's in your, somewhat exalted, where they're up here and you're down here, like the Righteous Gemstones. That's what it's, that TV show on HBO where they make fun of, it's rather crude and irreverent, but they make fun of these mega churches. They're just raking up the money, and they're just, the pretense of religion. The church is no better. They're dripping in gold.
Yeah, like my understanding is the Holy See is the largest landowner in the world. I mean, that's
different names too. Like they have different covers, different, like they're different companies and shell companies almost. Oh yeah, I did.
Well, that I didn't know, but I'm not surprised.
Oh yeah.
But getting back to what you were saying about kind of like the difference, I suspect that you are basically dealing with Protestants. You're not dealing with
few, but very few.
Right. I mean, yeah. New Orleans is a Catholic city, and so I went to Catholic school, elementary school, high school, and college. And that's very, very common in New Orleans. So, but the thing of what you were just saying about kind of like how religion just seems to, in the situation you're experiencing now, how it seems to have sort of constrained people's ability to sort of reason and think and sort of kind of understand the world. It reminds me of a novel that I started listening to the audiobook format And I put it down at one point because I lost interest in the characters. But the thing that fascinated me about this novel is it started off with a woman who's a truck driver. This is a small town, and she was basically driving a truck in the middle of the night, transporting beets from the beet farm to the processing plant. And, it's boring work. And so while she drove, she would listen to a call-in radio show. And so when people called into this show, what they talked about was stuff like, what has your experience been with angels? And so people would call in, this is the middle of the night, right? And they would call in and say, well, when I was a little kid, I saw an angel. The talk show host would say, oh, really? Tell us a little bit about it. And then they describe it. And the thing that I really thought was interesting about that novel is that, or at least, what the author was doing in the beginning in terms of setting this culture in this small town was how what she was showing is that there's this big swath of America. It's not a big population, but it's like it basically dots the country in all these small towns where people really think in terms of angels and, spirits coming to them and stuff like that. And I suspect that the people that you're dealing with, like right now, that's kind of the culture that they're operating in. And so
I'm not sure about that. I think they're interesting. They talk more about God than they do about Jesus or angels or any of that. So I'm not sure
really,
what they believe. Yeah, now this guy, he's been to He's been to 8 churches in 3 years. So what are you looking for?
right, exactly.
He has a crazy wife, crazy situation. And I was his go-to for everything. I would drive him. He's almost 80. I would drive him everywhere. I would feed them because they don't cook and they have takeout every night. And so on and on and on and on. Medical advice. Oh my God. I'm going to put a sign, not a clinic, on my door. Because you have and the medical care down here is horrendous.
In Florida?
Oh, yeah.
That's shocking.
We're on the West Coast. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's all PAs, which is fine, I'm sure, but they need supervision and what have you. So,
well, actually, for the audience and for my own benefit, like when you say PA, what do you mean in terms?
Physician's assistant. They're not MD.
Physician's assistant. Yeah. Okay.
So, some of them are great, I'm sure, but I'm from New York. People ask me all the time, where would you go if you needed a doctor, you need medical care? I say the airport.
Yeah, exactly. You mean home. You would go home.
She wrote this whole holy thing about how she needs a liver transplant. I said, she ate a box of macaron cookies in my kitchen last night. I don't think she needs a liver transplant. What are you talking about? Anyway, they were told that she needed a liver transplant. It was scary stuff, but that's what it is. But what can you do? So his take in particular is, it doesn't matter what you do on earth, what good you do, how good you are, if you're helpful, if you're kind, none of that matters. You have to go to that particular church. And if you don't do that, then you are. And it's interesting because they have this men's Bible group here, men's group, and they all congregate. So the man who conducted it died, and he wasn't that type. He didn't shove it down your throat. He died, and they were all over it. Went to this, the celebration of life and the funeral and the wake and the da and all this. Everybody had to get up and say something about something holy, and and that was September. Not one of them has reached out to the widow. Not gospel are you reading that says that? So, it's all fluff and phony. That's the way I look at it. So, interesting what the book is about, an American Pope, because I never in a million years thought there would be an American Pope. In fact, I did a podcast, an author show, Don McCauley, very nice man, very professional. He's done this a long time. And first thing out of his mouth is, I have to tell you, I read the book and the whole thing is plausible. This was April, and there will never be an American Pope. And then, ta-da! That was amazing. I tried to keep reminding him because he reposts my audio the show every couple of weeks. I said, remember me? Hello. But yeah, he didn't eat his words. So But
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it's fiction, but it's plausible. It's the church would do anything to cover up, um, a scandal or to cover up wrongdoing if, to prevent it from getting out and tarnishing their reputation. They would. And my next book has it even more so, but
Hmm.
it's almost like a lesson because the next book is called Women of a Lesser God. And I took that title because the the main character, who is the same Sophia, she's a journalist. So she's at an open interview with the Pope, and
Hmm.
she said, do you think women are you going to have women become priests? Are you going to allow that? And he says no. And she goes, do you think women are a lesser God? And she said, never mind, I know the answer. So, that's how I pulled the title. But that this book that's coming out is a year, but it explores it more. And then she as a character has to cover something up too, like in her personal life, or to
Hmm.
protect her family. So it shows the conflict of like a massive institution that has the power to do it, and she has to struggle to try to figure out how to protect her family from scandal.
Well,
You know,
I don't remember if I pressed record before while we were talking about this or after we were talking about this, but I want to bring this back to our conversation about marketing books, right? As I said, I'm going to post this on Substack, and that's like the hub from which the this interview is going to go to. YouTube, it's going to go to a bunch of other platforms, Spotify and so on. Now, the thing about Substack is it does have a lot of spaces where discussions like this occur, where people either talk to experts or scholars, or they are like experts or scholars and is talking about this kind of thing. In terms of trying to reach those spaces for this conversation so that people can see you and hear about your novels, what are some of the basic themes that would connect? I mean, I'm thinking in terms of SEO here.
yes, of course. Well, empowering women, number one.
Okay.
you know, being very brave and able not. And the other thing I can't stand is people who their whole life they're victims. Oh, poor me, woe is me, woe is me. And I don't have, they're heroes or heroines or whatever. They overcome. They don't wear a veil of victimhood. They overcome something and they become empowered. And
Okay.
and also a mother-daughter relationship. The daughter's kidnapped as a baby and the mother's injured in the process. So I know Italy pretty well. So she's sequestered in Venice in a convent.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing comes to light, like how it all happened. And I start the book right away with people tell me that's pretty brave, and it's not that the plot is right there in the beginning, like the Pope confesses that he had an affair and she's about to give birth. That's the first chapter. So it's there. And then there's a corrupt cardinal, which is not that far. And he unleashes a murderous spree to protect the church, get the kid, kidnap the kid, raise her in the Vatican, tell everybody that she was the orphan daughter of a Swiss guard and his wife. And then there's, of course, the one devout cardinal who's in charge, he's the biblioteca, and he educates her. So, and then the mother comes back, wakes up in a very strange way, gets her memory flooding back, like slowly, and realizes, oh my God, it's 12 years later. So then she goes to fight, and she doesn't think anybody will believe her, but she goes back to her Jewish landlady, and the landlady goes, of course they'll believe you, and she hands her Professor Kurtzer's book about the kidnapped child in Bologna that I told you about before. Mm-hmm. So that's the story, how it unfolds. And then, it's all covered up, and the Pope is always afraid of being exposed, and the cardinal who's responsible. I mean, you have to read it to know. It's rather cinematic, because it's not only a story of, it's not only a story of this family. It's also set in Italy with the sights and the sounds and the smells and the ambiance and the food. I put food in there. In fact, the second book, this is kind of funny, I have a new editor. I have the editor-in-chief he thinks I'm a pathetic old lady because I can't do formatting and everything, so I'm always crying to him. He helps me. New editor, and they're British, so it's almost like a different language, So he edited, and the characters are having their cooking, and it's pouring rain and cold in Rome. They're cooking peasant food. So he edits, shouldn't this be pleasant?
No, that's the opposite of what I intended.
That gave me a laugh. But yeah, they don't, it's different. Their language is different. I got the last publicist I had, he was so cute, and he would just be like writing me these things. I'm like, I have no idea what those words mean, but they have a whole nother language, like their slangs and slang words. He's from Wales. But this is a global publisher, so they're everywhere. In fact, the first book, they wanted my input on the cover, and it made my hair hurt because I don't know how to even approach that. I finally said, I don't want to be a rude, snarky American, but imagine your grandmother doing this. I don't know how to find a cover. So the editor wrote back, I'm from Vermont. So it's been fun, it's been stressful, but it's been fun. And they're wonderful people. All of them are wonderful. So, of course,
that's awesome.
They get the lion's share of profits, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Dan Brown makes, last book, 178 million.
Wow, really?
More now.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me. Yeah, I will.
Hold up now, right? You live in Manhattan.
I live right outside of the Bronx, basically. So in Westchester County.
There's in the Bronx. I was 11. I'm a Bronx girl.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Long time, way before you were born. But it was very different. Still.
I might be older than you think, but okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Janet, thank you so much. You're very good at this.
Okay, thank you.
I'm about to start a podcast with a friend of mine.
Okay.
We're not sure what we're going to call it or what our format, probably Invisible Women, two old ladies that aren't dead yet. It has a lot to do with it. It has a lot to do with trying to get a literary agent and all that kind of thing when you're not 30.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't write dystopian.
Well, the thing is, and this is the last thing I'll say, which is, I'm wondering how dystopian is going to sell now, because everything is becoming more and more dystopian. I mean, what's more dystopian than guys in masks and Kevlar jackets, snatching little old ladies and children off the street and tossing them into unmarked cars? I mean, that's pretty dystopian.
It's unbelievable, but it's hot. I'm in a silent book club here, and all the young ones, that's what they're reading. It's fantasy.
Yeah, I wonder. It's because I think it's
sci-fi. It's just weird.
Mm-hmm.
I have a young friend I met on Facebook. I've never met him personally, but he wrote, it's called The Monsters Among Us, and he wrote this. I happen to get it, and I don't like that kind of thing. It's not my genre. But it's fascinating, almost like a precursor to Genesis and fighting gods and all kinds of things. It's a lot of repetitive stuff, but it kind of blew me away. He asked me to review it. And I mean, he's a very good writer. So
okay.
Yeah, that I don't know how much of that you can, how much momentum you can get out of that. So it appeals to a certain age group.
Right, exactly.
I don't know. I have no clue. And as far as marketing is concerned, there's no magic formula as to what works.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, because basically, especially if you're not writing hard genre fiction, so if you're not just cranking out mysteries or cranking out, like you said, sci-fi, or cranking out dystopian novels and stuff like that, because the audience is just looking for more and more of the same thing. If you're not doing that, then you're just doing everything you can to let people know that you exist.
I have a website. It's my name, JoniMarieIraci.com.
Okay.
And anybody wants to contact me, I'm always happy to help or give advice or talk about what somebody's writing, or read the book. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Simon and Schuster and all those
Okay.
suspects.
Well, awesome, Joni. It was really nice
Vatican
talking to you.
Daughter. Thank you. The next one is Women of a Lesser God. That'll be out in a year. Read Vatican Daughter first so you know the story.
Okay,
Thank
doke.
you. Thank you, Henry. You're awesome.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, stay warm.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.